Good evening, everybody. We appreciate your being here this evening with us, and we appreciate those who are watching by live stream and also the ones who will view this video, no doubt, many, many times. My name is Joanne Fleming. I am the Executive Director for Grassroots America, We the People. We're the largest all-volunteer-led citizen action conservative organization in the state of Texas. We're very proud of that. We don't get paid to do what we do. We do it because we love Texas more. So we're going to begin by having a word of prayer from Judge Jackson. He's our 114th district judge. We like to call him the praying judge, and we need more of those because, surely praying judges really care about the rule of law. And then we're going to have the pledges led by Mr. Clayton Quinn. So if you all would please make sure that your cell phones are off. They're silenced. I don't want to hear a phone ring during this, please. Thank you.
All right, if you would, please bow your head with me. Most holy and righteous God, God of these weary years and troubled times, God who reigns on high in glory, yet willingly draws near in humility. We ask that your presence enter this place tonight, not as a formality, but as a foundation. For you are the God who searches the heart and unveils the soul, the God before whom no motive is hidden and no meaning obscured. We ask, Lord, that you bless the 2026 election. Set a watch over it. Protect it from every deception and needless division. Guard it from corruption and confusion. Let always integrity be stronger than influence and principle ever louder than politics. Send us candidates across the ballot who seek virtue before votes and who prefer what is right to what serves their interest right now. Raise up leaders who love justice, seek mercy, and walk humbly. God, tonight remove from us listeners whatever blinds our sight or dulls our hearing. Give us wisdom to weigh carefully and consider deeply. Keep us mindful during this event that our vote is not a performance, but a responsibility. And tonight, God, we ask that you shine your light upon this moment and upon these candidates. Grant them clarity of mind and honesty of heart. Let no word they say be guided by fear, pride, or ambition, but instead by a faithfulness to truth, justice, and the laws of nature and of nature's God. Remove from them every spirit of deception, every temptation to distort or demean. Remind them that beyond this room, beyond this moment, it is you who will hold them to account for what they say and do with this opportunity. Strip away then what is false and leave only what is right. Let wisdom guide their conversation. Let humility temper every answer. And let your justice be the final witness in this room. All these things we ask, not trusting in ourselves, but in the saving power of your name and the redeeming work of your Son. And all the people say, amen.
Thank you all. If y'all please remain standing for our pledges and pledge to the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, candidates. You may be seated. Again, thank you for being here. We appreciate your attendance, both here present with us and online. Tonight's event is not a debate. It is a substantive public job interview for the next Attorney General of Texas. These men are asking you to hire them at the ballot box to do a very important job. The Attorney General plays a central role in enforcing state law, representing Texas in court, and protecting the rights and interests of more than 30 million Texans. Because the responsibilities of this office are so significant, our goal is to move beyond campaign rhetoric and explore each candidate's legal judgment, their ethical framework, and their readiness to serve. This is not about popularity. It's not about who has already endorsed these candidates. Frankly, I tell all the campaigns that are on my doorstep saying, well, so-and-so endorsed me, and so-and-so endorsed me, and so-and-so endorsed me. That has zero influence on what Grassroots America does. And I don't say that with pride. I just say we have a due diligence process and we follow it to the letter. And most candidates get a background check, a very thorough background check. So this is not about, political cheerleading. This is about who is going to represent Texas in a very dangerous period in history. And the dangerous period in history that we are entering is called post-Trump America. There will come a day when we will not have a President Trump. Now, we are praying for a strong individual who will preserve what President Trump has tried his best to do. I say that, not saying that we worship President Trump. We don't. Grassroots America worships Jesus, period. But we do pray for President Trump, and we appreciate his efforts. He is but a man. But he is a strong man, and I like the way that he went to Davos. He did not read that room, he led that room. And that's the kind of leader that we are looking for Attorney General. Truth should never yield to factions. The questions tonight are designed to illuminate how the candidates think, how they reason through complex issues, and how they would approach the duties entrusted to the state's chief legal officer. This 150-minute candidate forum features public job interviews for 3 of the 4 2026 Republican primary candidates for Texas Attorney General. State Senator Mays Middleton, Aaron Wrights, and Congressman Chip Roy. Senator Joan Huffman declined to participate in this job interview. The structured format ensures each candidate receives equal time to address critical issues selected by our 2 skilled and proficient moderators. The Honorable Austin Reeve Jackson, 114th District Court Judge and a member of the Federalist Society. And Mr. Roy Maynard, an author, award-winning writer, a seasoned public policy analyst, a teacher, and a debate coach. Rules of decorum. This is not a rally. This is not a straw poll. This is a serious job interview for a very serious job with far-reaching consequences for the people of Texas and for these United States. I've been a full-time volunteer conservative leader in Texas for more than 30 years. I know that sometimes campaigns and ardent supporters will try to use psychological ops on other candidates by being loud, yelling during the debate, and making rude noises to distract the other candidates. You won't be doing that here. Not here. And here's why you won't. The reason I can say that is Fleming rule number 3. The people who pay the freight make the rules. And I happen to sign the check for this event, for Gravity Films, for our live stream folks, for this venue. So guess what? I get to make the rules. So now I'm going to tell you that I handled a forum last week, and we were in a house of worship. And there were people in there who acted like anything but people who knew anything about being in church. Well, you're not in church tonight, but I'm going to ask you to think about a traditional church service that I hope you attend on a regular basis, and I hope that you will have on your very best manners. Because, as I said, we didn't ask anybody to help us pay for this. We did not ask the candidates to make a donation to us. We did not ask any of their donors to help us pay for this. We paid for this because God's blessed us to have the means to do so. So I'm going to ask you not to ignore my request. So please do not jeer at the candidates. If you do, our hired security folks will come stand by your table. And that means you are going to be close to exiting the room. And I would say to you, I love every one of you with the love of the Lord. I do. I'm going to sit right there on that corner. And if I have to get up out of my chair, y'all don't want me to have to get up out of my chair. So please respect this process. You know, when I was thinking about this, George Washington said that if we expect our leaders to be statesmen, then we ourselves should be statesmen. There's a lot of deep and important nuggets of wisdom embedded in that. So I would ask you all to please respect this event and what I ask you to do. Now let's go over what the candidates were told. The candidates had some rules. We shared this with them. These are our standard Q&A format rules. The candidates may sit or stand to make opening and closing statements. Candidates may use paper during the interviews for note-taking. Candidates may not send or receive text or ask for assistance from campaign supporters or staff. Now, these gentlemen would never do that. But I've done a lot of candidate forums, and you would be shocked at some of the things that some candidates try. Candidates should spend time answering the specific questions posed by the moderators. And remember this, attempts to change the subject will produce corrective action. Mr. Maynard and Judge Jackson have the authority to say, whoa, you didn't answer the question. And you would really prefer them to say that rather than me. So let's see what else we have here. Strict time limits will be enforced. When the timekeeper, Mr. Steenson down there, holds up the yellow card, candidates, you have 30 seconds remaining. The red card means please finish your sentence, but don't start a new paragraph. The order of opening and closing statements and rebuttal periods were drawn by the candidates. Mr. Fabry took care of that. Security of debate, topics, and questions. Grassroots America never reveals topics or questions in advance. In fact, I don't even know what the questions are. When I ask these two moderators to take care of the questions, they are of the caliber. They know exactly what they need to ask to accomplish our mission here tonight. I did not want to see the questions for two really good reasons. One, I have known Congressman Roy a long time, and I've known Senator Middleton a long time. And Aaron I met when he was with Cruz. So I already know them. I didn't want to have any fingerprints or bias on these questions. So with our endorsements, candidates may be eligible for endorsement by our board of directors. However, it takes 5 of 7 votes of the board to endorse in any race. If no candidate garners 5 votes, the board will consider a recommendation which requires 4 of 7 votes. And I might as well say it here tonight because I'm already hearing from people all over the state. How come you haven't endorsed, X, Y, and Z? Well, we don't necessarily endorse in every race. A public statement will be released after the board has had an opportunity to deliberate on the results of these candidate interviews. And so we have a run of show here. We want to keep to the time. The time, just to explain to you guys, the time that Senator Huffman would have had in this has been kept in the program to give them a chance to redirect a question if you don't answer, right? So we're not cutting the time short, but we did not add any questions. They have 5 questions each, and we're going to begin with Judge Jackson.
I believe opening statements first. Is that?
Oh, yes, you're right. Oh, my goodness.
And that's Mr. Middleton.
See,
Senator
I
Middleton.
just messed that all up. So y'all know your order? You know your order. Okay. Well, y'all start, and Mr. Timekeeper will start.
All right. Howdy, Tyler. It's great being back here. I got my lovely wife here, Macy, my father-in-law, Scott Shaver. This feels like home. All my in-laws are here, and it feels like home because of the values, those Christian conservative values that brought us here tonight. And there are 2 reasons why we're here. Number 1, to elect conservatives. Number 2, to defeat the left, right? That's why we showed up here tonight. And look, there's a reason why. I'm the only one in this race that's been protested at the Texas Capitol. They had these big, ugly green signs with my face on it, and they called me the bathroom bigot. Why? Because I don't want men in my little girl's restroom or locker room or shower. And like our president, I give away the salary. I don't take the pension, the health care, the state license plate, nothing. This is a calling for me. This is not a job. And I serve every single day to fight for the conservative values that we believe in here. And that's why President Trump called me a MAGA champion, and my conservative record is second to none. And from day one, that's what I've done. In the Texas House, as chairman of the Texas House Freedom Caucus, and now in the Senate, fighting for you and our Christian conservative values.
Well, good evening, everybody. Appreciate y'all being here. It's great to be in East Texas. Great to be in Tyler. I used to come here regularly to see my great aunt. She passed last year. My parents used to live up in Mount Pleasant. But it's great to be with the God-fearing people of East Texas. And I'll tell you that, 14 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I had a 2-month-old daughter and a 2-year-old son. And I went through that process and came out the other side through the good Lord, through prayer and the faith we had in Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. And, my wife, when we were running for Congress, she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm going to leave it all on the field to save this country and this state for my kids and grandkids." And I'll just tell you, the question that we were asked to pose in this opening statement or to answer was, what's our vision? And my vision for the Office of Attorney General is that we should carry out that function as if we are the Republic of Texas. We should act as a people, united, to stand up under our Constitution, under the rule of law. Yes, under the United States Constitution. I say as someone who swore an oath to defend it, but as someone who wants to defend the state of Texas going forward. God bless.
Well, howdy, Tyler. My name's Aaron Reitz, and I'm running for Attorney General because I believe that we're in a battle for the soul of our state and our nation. And I know from personal experience that the primary arena in which we are fighting the dark forces of the left is the justice system. This is something President Trump ran on, he won on it, and after winning, one of his very first orders of business was to nominate me to a senior executive post at the Justice Department. And when he did that, he said, Aaron Reitz is a true MAGA attorney and a warrior for the Constitution. Now, on the one hand, that's a good shorthand for what our next Attorney General ought to be. But more fundamentally, more importantly, is there's a reason why he used those words to describe me. It's because I've spent my entire career leading legal troops into legal combat to deliver legal victories for our state, our nation, our values, and our Constitution. This is not a legislative post. It's a legal post. And as we flesh out these answers, I want you to ask yourselves, who up here has the legal record to give you the confidence that they can continue to lead our state up and down the chain of the justice system? Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to start by asking you whether the job you're seeking is a job we even need anymore. Governor Abbott, based on some frustrations that he and others feel with certain liberal district attorneys and judges in places like Houston and Dallas, recently called for the creation of a new political office, the Chief State Prosecutor, who ostensibly would take on many of the roles and much of the authority currently given to the Texas Attorney General. Is such a new office needed, Would it still be needed if you were serving as Attorney General? Is it constitutional under our state constitution? And do you support its creation?
First question to Mr. Middleton.
Absolutely, I support it, and here's why. Our laws, our Constitution, these are not suggestions. And as we've seen all over this state, of course, it's mainly the George Soros elected district attorneys. These are mainly the blue counties that are doing this. There are some red ones doing it as well. This is not exclusive to Democrats. But they're treating our laws and our Constitution as suggestions. And what does that do? That rewards lawbreakers and criminals because they know there won't be accountability. And accountability works. Law and order, tough on crime, that's America first. And you got to ask yourself the question, if someone's not prosecuting, how are we going to keep our families safe? Because part of my goal in this office is to make sure that Texas is the safest state in America to live and to raise a family. So we have to have that backup power to prosecute in a statewide prosecutorial role, but also I support adding those powers to the Attorney General's office as well. That's been a priority of mine. Obviously, we took a step forward in that with human trafficking this session, additionally with election integrity as well, adding to the power of the AG to prosecute those particular crimes. But frankly, I believe the AG should be able to prosecute any violation of state law because you've got to have that backup power to prosecute. We've seen them set these policies in these counties of not prosecuting election fraud, voter fraud, all sorts of things related to ethics and politicians profiting off their position. And actually, one of my priorities this past session was making it easier to remove those from office that are violating our laws. And before what happened is when you filed a petition for removal from office from someone that was incompetent and not following the law as per se incompetence, in my opinion, it would go to a district judge in that same home county, home field advantage, right? Okay, so you got a George Soros county judge, for example, going to George Soros district judge, that they're not going to be removed from office. Now it goes to the presiding judge of the administrative judicial region, which is an Abbott appointee, a Republican, and then it is assigned to a Republican district judge, jury, and prosecuting attorney. This is how we bring accountability to keep our families safe.
Well, thank you for the question. It's an excellent question. And to answer it, yeah, of course, the Office of the Attorney General needs to continue. The function of the Attorney General is much broader than just that one particular area, whether it's child support, whether it's appellate jurisdiction and defending the state laws of Texas, whether it's challenging federal laws that are interfering with our lives, whether it's open government, whether it's, again, challenging laws and then Supreme Court decisions like Plyler v. Doe. These are things that we need to continue. But on this particular question, as someone whose first legal job was a law clerk in the Prosecutor's Assistance Division in the Office of Attorney General, and as someone who has stood before a judge as an assistant United States attorney, prosecuting bad guys and putting them in jail, I do believe very much that prosecutorial function should be added and enhanced within the Office of Attorney General. I think what the governor's putting out is a concept, and it is the right concept, to say that in a state as large as Texas, in the 8th biggest economy in the world with 30 plus million people, we need to have a function in Austin with the state to say that we're going to go after particularly organized crime in the state, cartels, gang members, people that are repeat offenders. In the city of Houston, okay, when I was at a meeting with Crime Stoppers last week, there were 220 individuals over the last 6 years who have been killed in the city of Houston by repeat felony offenders. Like, stop and think about that for a minute. 220 lives lost, repeat offenders put on the streets by DAs, by judges that shouldn't be doing that. So we should be using the bully pulpit as the Office of Attorney General. We should be changing the laws. We should be forcing these judges to have to, respond to this. But importantly, if we have that prosecutorial function, then we can step over and we can say, look, we're not going to let these dangerous individuals run rogue across the state of Texas.
Article 4, Section 22 of the Texas Constitution says, quote, "The Attorney General shall represent the state of Texas in all courts and pleas." As I mentioned during my opening remarks, this is a legal, law enforcement, executive branch job, not a legislative job. What the governor has proposed is, as Chip said, a concept. To create it, it would require legislation. I support the concept and would support the legislation. But as it stands right now, The reason why I cite that constitutional provision is because it is important to remember that this is not only a legal job, but it is primarily a civil law job as opposed to a criminal law job. A lot of times people think, oh, this is the top cop or the top prosecutor, and if we have the state prosecutor's office, that the AG's relevance would go away. I don't agree with that necessarily at all. But you have to ask yourself, given the actual current powers of the Attorney General's office, what can be done to nevertheless crack down on these rogue Soros-funded district attorneys? Now, the AG has vast civil, constitutional, administrative, regulatory powers to be able to smoke out this Soros network. It's a vast network of C3 nonprofits, C4 political action committees, shell companies, political candidates, local government grants that are handed out. It's a whole money laundering scheme to put local deep blue leadership at the top of our crime-infested areas, and rather than crack down on crime, it makes crime worse. So as Attorney General, my job will be to use those civil powers to smoke out that network, seek the removal of the worst offenders, and to hold them accountable to the law, because they won't hold themselves accountable. And on this stage, the only one that has the experience wielding those tools and to get it done is me.
All right, Congressman Roy, we'll start with you this time. And you just heard Mr. Reitz talk about the civil arena in which the Attorney General's office is called to engage, and it's not often discussed. But one of the primary duties of the Texas Attorney General is to ensure the collection and enforcement of child support, particularly for low-income individuals. However, under Ken Paxton, child support enforcement actions have reached record lows and are almost non-existent in many places across the state. Should child support collection remain the job of the Attorney General, and if elected, would you do anything different from the current administration?
Well, thank you for this question. Child support is a critical function. You know, Texas had been the leader nationwide in our effectiveness in collecting child support. And one of the reasons that was put forth, and I know this because I had served as the first Assistant Attorney General, the first Assistant Attorney General under Ken Paxton, and had to spend a lot of time working with child support. People don't know this. There's 4,100 employees, give or take, in the AG's office. 2,500 of them are in child support. And we have not been, to the best of my understanding in my conversations with people, doing what we need to do in recent years to ensure the collection of child support. One of the things that is a constant battle and has been evolving over the last decade that goes to the heart of it is the completely broken information system, computer systems, data systems that allow you to be able to track, follow, and end up delivering on child support collection. Having the child support function under the Office of Attorney General gives it a authority that has made Texas, frankly, the star in child support collection nationwide over the years. But in recent years, we've been lagging because we haven't had the proper information flow and the ability to go track all of that. So we need a complete overhaul of how we go about doing that, tracking the information, tracking the data, finding the deadbeat dads, making sure that they're being, that we're delivering in child support. But also, I want to be very clear, making sure it's equitable. I mean, one of the things that I talk about all the time across the state of Texas is people's concern that it's not being equitably applied, and working to ensure that is the case. But yes, to answer your question, child support should stay in the Office of Attorney General. We should enforce it more readily, more effectively, and we should use the best technology and information flow to be able to track that down and track down deadbeat dads while also ensuring that it's equitably applied.
Mr. Reeves?
So I would say of all the issues that after events like this I get pulled aside privately to ask about is the child support stuff. I'm glad that you raised it in a question, but this is where most Texans actually experience personally the AG's office. They read the headlines that come out of the AG's office, great constitutional victories, big litigation victories, investigations launched, victories won in court. But to your average Texan, that's great, and we celebrate that stuff here in this room. But to your average Texan who's maybe going through a tough divorce or having trouble with raising their kids or getting what their former spouse owes them, this is where people really feel it. if when they check their bank account towards the end of the month, is that deposit going to be made? Am I going to be able to get groceries, or am I going to have to send my kid early to school to get that free lunch that's available? And people have to live with this, and they're at the behest of enforcers and deciders that are seemingly outside of their control. The Attorney General's office enforces child support decisions. Those decisions are made in a sort of very complicated bureaucratic web of family courts, child protective services, 4D courts, enforcers, custody agreements. It is this huge, there are so many parties involved in this. What the AG's office does is we enforce, once a decision is made, we have to enforce and collect. Knowing that there are some inefficiencies that we're dealing with, Attorney General Paxton has instituted a major IT overhaul, which I know people are going to start falling asleep when I talk about this, but blessedly I only have 20 more seconds to talk about it. But we're in the middle of a major IT and cloud-based transition. If we are going to see that transition through effectively, it's important to have a Paxton successor who's been endorsed by Paxton to continue those changes and evolutions so that these things are enforced equitably.
Well, let's take a step back. Why is the child, yes, it should be in the AG's office, the Child Support Division, but why is it so important? Because this is about kids. This is about protecting kids and making sure that they have the resources that their parents need to take care of them, whether that's school or food or transportation. I mean, this is about making sure they have the basic things that a child needs in their life. That's why this is so important. And look, yeah, we do need to continue to make this easier on parents, transitioning to a cloud-based case management system. That needs to be completed. I will complete that in the Attorney General's office because I have heard from parents all over the state. I have heard from constituents in this. And there are things that come through the legislature that would make this harder. Frankly, one of them, for example, was lowering the interest rate on past due child support from about 12%. I think they wanted to lower it to maybe 3 or 4%. Well, who does that hurt? This is child support that's already past due. And I helped kill that bill so it didn't pass, because if it had, it would have hurt kids, right? This is a very important tool. This is a very important goal in the AG's office, and it is a very important duty, because one of the highest callings we've got in government is protecting kids and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. And that's exactly what that division is there to do, and make sure that it serves real Texans. You know, actually the Child Support Division in Austin, yes, they have offices around the state, but it's one of the largest employers in Austin, right? The Child Support Division. Why don't we move those jobs elsewhere in the state? Put them in Tyler, put them in Longview, put them in Lubbock, put them in Amarillo, put them in Brownsville. It's going to be more conservative. It's going to save state dollars, right? Think about how expensive office space is in Travis County. And also, I believe it will be more responsive to Texans, the ones that are actually paying the bill, the taxpayers for this. So that's also another priority of mine.
All right, Mr. Wrights, I believe you get first response at this one. At various times, reviewing your websites and articles in which you've been quoted, it appears that each of you have expressed at least some support for President Trump's immigrant deportation program. In counties and courtrooms across Texas, we are suddenly seeing people being deported shortly after being arrested for serious violent felonies. Additionally, we have seen defendants voluntarily asking to be deported shortly after arrest. While this may appear good at first glance, it also means that criminals are escaping punishment and victims are being denied justice through the prosecution of their cases. Knowing this is going on, does this change at all your support for President Trump's deportation program, and if so, how? And if serving as Attorney General, what would you do in response to the Trump administration on this issue?
During the Biden years, we were invaded by tens of millions of illegal aliens that we know of. It's hard to calculate how bad the situation is only because of the scale of the damage and the invasion that was done. I'm proud to say that when I served as Ken Paxton's deputy and offensive coordinator. I sued the 46th president, that's AutoPen Joe Biden, by the way. I sued the 46th president 46 times, and I won 85% of those cases. Nearly a third of those cases had to do with illegal immigration and border security. And we won virtually all of those cases to withhold the worst excesses of the Biden-era immigration disaster. So strong is my record on illegal immigration and border security that the National Border Patrol Council has endorsed me to be the next Attorney General of Texas. We absolutely need an Attorney General who is in line with the Trump administration's deportation agenda. I stand by it. Now, I expect everyone in this race is going to say, I stand with the Trump administration on deporting illegal aliens. Well, only one of us on this stage, however, has been fully vetted, tested, and hand-selected by the president to carry out at the national scale significant portions of that deportation agenda. When I launched my campaign for Attorney General, Border Czar Tom Homan put out a sterling statement of support, making it clear to Texans that I was a go-to guy to facilitate deporting illegal aliens.
Mr. Wrights, I see your time is winding down. If you could, maybe talk just a moment about the issue that courts are now dealing with where defendants are being deported prior to their cases being filed and pursued in courts, which is causing concern for victims and victims' rights groups.
What I would say is the only due process an illegal alien is owed is arrest, detention, and deportation. And to the extent that these so-called immigrant rights groups want to cause problems by, causing legal problems or instigating an insurrection in our country, I don't really quite care for their opinion on it. If you're here illegally, you get deported.
So is it fair to say then you support the deportation of defendants regardless of whether they have offenses pending in Texas courts?
They may make frivolous claims that are intentionally designed to thwart.
A simple yes or no will work if.
Well, I want to be clear on what the tactics are. What these defendants will do is they will claim that they have to be adjudicated on these other things to avoid deportation.
I understand, but from a victim's perspective, you would tell a crime victim that you support the deportation of the defendant in their case, even if it means that victim doesn't get their day in court.
Deport all illegal aliens, period.
Senator Middleton?
Yeah, this is fairly simple here. We need to deport every last illegal immigrant, 100% of them. No exceptions, no loopholes, no breaks. That's it. That's the bottom line. And to do that, we have to back up President Trump in this agenda, right? You've seen what happened in Minnesota, right? The local government, their governor including, and the mayor, Frey, there, is blocking ICE, right? They're stirring up these riots to stop ICE from being able to do their job. Well, it turns out we have some very powerful tools in Texas that will prevent things like that. There's the author of one of them right back there in the back of the room, Matt Schaefer. It's called The Ban on Sanctuary Cities. We actually expanded that this session, 287G, right? We require all counties in Texas now to have an ICE detainer 287G agreement. Before, it was only 35 counties of 254. That's pretty sad, right? All counties have to have that now, which means they turn over these illegal immigrants to ICE for deportation. That is the law in Texas, and the law is not optional. They've already broken the law by coming here. They've already committed a crime by coming here. That's also why I fought for SB 4, which is right now, that's before the Fifth Circuit. That would be a top priority of mine to win that appeal. And what SB 4 is the state's criminal trespass and deportation law. And it allows the state of Texas to charge illegal immigrants with criminal trespass and return them to their country of origin. So the state has tools available. A lot of these I talked about here tonight, I helped draft. Right? I know what these tools are. I know what we can do in the power of the AG's office. In fact, the ban on sanctuary cities is probably the most powerful one. The AG can and I will sue to remove those from office that are in the way of President Trump's border security and deportation agenda. It is that simple. We have to aggressively enforce these laws. They have already broken the law. That's why they have to be deported.
So again, to clarify, you would agree with Mr. Wrights then that a defendant should be deported before they are tried and convicted and sentenced and not after, even if that denies a victim the opportunity to have their day in court?
I believe illegal immigrants should be deported as quickly as possible.
Congressman Roy?
Well, thanks for the question. Since last Saturday, when the events unfolded in Minneapolis, I've been in deep coordination and conversation with Tom Homan, with the leadership in the White House, trying to make important decisions about what we do to try to win this fight. Because we cannot back down. That's the simple truth. And Tom went on the ground. He did a great job in trying to, I think, kind of restore some sanity. But we cannot back down. So to answer your question, there's 1.5 million people in the United States right now under orders of removal from a judge. Those 1.5 million people need to be removed. There are tens of thousands of people that have criminal histories, that are engaging in criminal behavior, that need to be removed. The 287G program absolutely needs to be utilized in the state of Texas, but I'll tell you, as someone who talks to people on the ground, who I'm not going to go through rattling off a list of endorsements, but friends and people that are in the law enforcement community, sheriffs along the border, the 287G program is not in full force among the local jurisdictions across the state of Texas. Anybody who understands what's going on will tell you that. And so what we are in desperate need of is statewide leadership to stand up and say that the entire state of Texas is going to use every ounce of our force to stand behind ICE, stand behind Border Patrol, and yes, remove these individuals who are here illegally, and in particular, the people that are literally currently today under orders of removal. And that's get lost in all of this. You can win that message. You can win the message when you're talking about the murderers of Jocelyn Nungray, when you're talking about the murders of Rachel Marin or Laken Riley. Talk about the criminals, talk about the people under orders, and then remove them with every power you've got.
So again, just to clarify, it sounds like there at the end, maybe you have a slightly different position. Would you support giving victims and district attorneys the opportunity to prosecute cases before a defendant is deported, or would you support deporting them, as is currently happening in many cases, deporting them pre-trial?
You should remove illegal aliens who are here, and irrespective, my point is just simply this: you have 1.5 million people right now under orders of removal. Remove them. And remove the people who are here illegally. And when you go through and you find people here illegally, remove them.
And I'm going to try to pin you down the same way the other two did. If you were talking to a victim of a crime, would you tell them that you support deportation pre-trial before that defendant is tried, or would you as Attorney General seek to delay deportation so that a defendant could be tried?
If someone is here illegally, they should be removed. That's it.
All right, Senator Middleton, what is an ethical failure by a Texas Attorney General or an attorney in their office that would concern you most, even if the conduct might technically be legal? Can you cite a specific example?
So, like I mentioned earlier, for me, this is a calling. This is not a job. And everything we do in government has to bring honor and glory to Him, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, period, the end. And that's the standard that I hold myself to. That's the standard that I would hold everyone in my office to, because this is pretty simple here. We're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. Government doesn't grant us any rights. All of our rights come from God. All authority in government comes from God. And as it says in our Declaration of Independence, we're endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. And in the preamble to the Texas Constitution, it says, humbly invoking the blessings of Almighty God. That is the foundation for everything. That is why the Ten Commandments is so important. That's why I've been fighting to put that back into our schools, put prayer back into our schools, defeat the atheists to do that, which is actually hard to do. They're fighting us tooth and nail. But that's how it's got to work, and that's how it will work in my office. We've got to make sure that it's the highest standard, and that's the standard that I hold everyone to. that works for me. And you got to lead by example on that too. I want to make sure, that the Texas Attorney General's office is protecting and defending those God-granted freedoms that I hold dearly. When I put my hand on the Bible, I mean it. That's not a suggestion.
So are there specific ethical failures that an attorney could engage in that you would not tolerate in your office? Anything specific you can tell?
Well, here's one I've seen in the Capitol. Attorneys do this. Taxpayer-funded lobbying, politicians profiting off of their position. I'll tell you, I always file one of the most unpopular bills in Austin, which is stopping legislators from becoming lobbyists after they leave office. That's the cooling off period. That makes you one of the most hated people in Austin, by the way, which is me. But we're not in this to be liked and loved by our fellow politicians and lobbyists. And I expect that standard from everyone that would work in my office, especially when they're trying to profit off taxpayers. That is one of the most odious things that happens in Austin that I've got zero tolerance for.
Congressman Roy?
So it is critically important that those individuals who are entrusted to serve the public, in fact, put the public and their job and their oath before themselves. So you ask what the line is here, or, are there ethical examples with respect to what some attorneys, I think is what you're saying generally in the Office of Attorney General. Anyone who engages in self-dealing, anyone who is focused on self at the expense of service, anyone who's looking to enrich themselves, anyone who is engaging in anything that you would see as unethical behavior with respect to certainly not being truthful, et cetera. All of those things have no place in something where you've been entrusted to carry out the laws of the state of Texas. And, that's one of the fundamental pillars of our nation. If we don't have people that are carrying that forward, then people lose trust. One of the issues, side comment, just a little bit like my friend here did with respect to taxpayer-funded lobby, I'd say, I'm trying to end congressional stock trading. I just don't think you can have trust in members of Congress if they're enriching themselves while they're voting on this stuff. So we're close to getting that passed. Those are things like that I think you've got to do to try to restore trust in people that are leading the state. So I would have a pretty high standard, as I've had in my office and generally, about how we approach these things.
Before I even became an officer in the United States Marine Corps, I had to go to officer candidate school. And the motto of Marine Corps OCS is the Latin phrase ductus exemplo, which means lead by example. Even as a Fightin' Texas Aggie, I know we have a couple Aggies in the room, we used to say what? An Aggie will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. And I have carried both of those statements in my heart in everything that I've done, in every team that I've led, in every platoon I've charged, in every lawsuit I've worked on, in every investigation I've led, in every legal initiative that I've taken at the state and federal level. It is essential for not only for myself as the leader of those efforts, but for my teams to be carrying themselves with sterling character and the highest standards of ethics and integrity. And so, yes, there are an innumerable number of standards that could potentially, in a hypothetical world, get violated that I wouldn't stand for, and you got to get rid of it. You got to be above reproach. And by the way, we also can't give our enemies, which we are surrounded by, any foothold. That's why 2 Thessalonians 5:22 says, avoid even the appearance of impropriety. You got to carry yourself above reproach. Now, during my time as Ken Paxton's deputy, I lived that out. I saw no malfeasance. I saw no violations of ethics. I was deeply involved in all of that. And yet, the two men on this stage with me bought the lie that there was some sort of widespread corruption. It's why Chip was the first elected official in America to call for Paxton to be removed from office. It's why Mays spent nearly $1 million bankrolling Paxton's primary challengers, the House impeachment managers, the House Republicans that voted to impeach, and on day one of the Senate trial, voted for the sham impeachment trial to proceed. And so I stood with my integrity These guys bought the lie that Paxton was corrupt and fanned those flames. And I think that's disqualifying.
All right, Congressman Roy. The Attorney General is the final referee on open records disputes. Yet that office is also one of the largest generators of sensitive records in state government. What specific transparency obligation should apply to the Attorney General's own office in reviewing whether its record should be disclosed that does not currently exist but should if the public is to trust your enforcement of the open records law?
Well, this is an important question, and let me just pull up for a minute to talk about open records generally and the importance of it. It is another area, like child support, where I believe that we are not where we need to be. The Office of the Attorney General needs to be quick in determinations. Currently, we're getting a lot of requests given to the Office of Attorney General that are not getting turned around expeditiously for, frankly, a lot of conservatives, a lot of Texans who want to know what's going on with their local governments. They want to know why DAs are putting criminals on the streets. They want to be able to go after local government and say, what are you doing? They're getting stonewalled by bureaucrats, and the Office of Attorney General is supposed to be very quick in helping those people use open records to be able to thwart the bureaucracy of local government. And I just don't think we're doing that as effective as we could be. When I was the first assistant, I had a hard rule about how fast we needed to turn those things around, and we need to have those things turned around very quickly. To the point about the Office of Attorney General, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And the Office of Attorney General, of course, within the boundaries of what you need to be concerned about what the law states in terms of things that you don't turn over, the Office of Attorney General needs to be every bit as accountable under open records as other government agencies. And that is something that, as Attorney General, I would be putting out and leading on as well.
Mr. Wright?
You know, almost all of the fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption that happens at the local level is exacerbated by these local government entities taking advantage of the various gray areas in the contours of public information law and open meetings law. As Attorney General, I believe, look, if you think that the Somalian Quality Leering Center, fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption is bad in Minnesota, I'm here to tell you that in a state with a population that's 5 times as large and an economy that is like 9 times as large, I expect to find, if we treat public exposure, public fraud correctly, and we shine a bright light on it, I expect to find orders of magnitude more amounts of fraud, waste, and abuse. And I'm not going to allow these local government entities that have lawyered up and found ways to game the public information litigation process to pull a wool over the lawyers to get exceptions to not disclose things. My bias is always toward transparency. I have led, one of the divisions I led when I was Paxton's deputy was the Public Information Division. And my guidance was always to, within the bounds of the law, assume release and transparency. When I'm the next Attorney General, we're just going to turn that up even higher. We're going to shine the bright lights so the cockroaches scatter and then we can find a way to smash them. That's what we're going to do. But I'm telling you right now, the way that this works, however, is where are your property taxes going? Why is the MUD assessing a new fee? How is your public school districts using their money? They're lawyered up, they're taxpayer-funded lobbying up, and they're finding a way to avoid disclosure. And as the next Attorney General, I'm not going to have any of it.
Senator Middleton?
This is a statewide problem. Been all over the state. Talked to activists for years. I've been in this fight for years. And I hate to say this, but open records have become closed records in Texas. And you as taxpayers are having to fight to get access to the very documents that you paid to create. You're owed these documents. And you've got taxpayer-funded lobbyists like Texas Association of School Boards, Texas Municipal League, Texas Association of Counties that is training local government in how to hide these from you. And think about what they're hiding. Like, we love to talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, right? We all want to get rid of that. Well, how do you even know that the waste, fraud, and abuse is even happening if they're concealing the documents from you? There's over 6,000 public information requests that are denied every year based on the various exceptions. Obviously, some of them are law enforcement, and we need to make sure those continue. But how are you going to eliminate the waste, fraud, and abuse if you can't even figure it out? If you can't even turn the lights on for the roaches to scatter? This has always been a top priority of mine, to make sure that taxpayers get the very documents that they are owed. This is how you hold government accountable. This is also why I want to start an anti-corruption division in the AG's office and put the open records division in that division, because the presumption should always be to release these to the public. What are they trying to hide is always the question I ask. And I have fought this in my own district in Kemah, where they were denying records, not just to the media, but to taxpayers on things that happened that probably could have been felonies, right? There could be crimes that could be covered up. I mean, the list goes on, but we've got to make sure that open records are truly open. And I have been in the fight to do that, and I will make sure that is a top priority of mine in the Attorney General's office.
All right. Mr. Fabry has graciously extended me one follow-up question on that, and each of you, I guess, will have 1 minute to respond, and we'll just start Senator Middleton and go down the table. If records are requested of the Attorney General's office, in other words, records that the Attorney General's office owns, maintains, or created, if records are sought under the Open Records Act and the Attorney General's office believes that they are not subject to disclosure under the Open Records, should someone other than the Attorney General's office serve as the final arbiter of whether those records should be disclosed? And I'll just give you all each 1 minute to respond.
Sure, you could go to SOA, but here's the problem that I want to make sure to avoid here. When what I've seen right now with the open records problems that we've had all over the state is people are having to hire lawyers, right? That's not fair to taxpayers. Why are they having to hire an attorney just to get a hold of some documents, and then they're sent a bill for $10,000 for a request? That's ridiculous too. These should be free, by the way. Second of all, we should be there to help, and I will be there to help in the AG's office. And if there is an exception, it could be a law enforcement exception, it needs to be clear and it needs to be specific to that particular case. And if they're unhappy with that answer, there needs to be a very quick challenge and appeals process in order to get these documents to the taxpayers that requested them. So yes.
So to summarize, you believe that the Attorney General's office can police its own records?
Yes.
All right.
And through SOA as well, which is, the State Office of Administrative Hearings.
Congressman Roy?
The Office of Attorney General must be at the tip of the spear in ensuring that people have access to government records through the law. We must follow the law. And as stewards of the law, we must enforce the law at the Office of Attorney General. But to answer your question, yes. Whether it's through litigation or whether it's through whatever structure we want to put in place, if the Office of Attorney General is not doing what the people want to be able to see records getting out, I have no problem with there being a third-party arbiter with respect to the courts or otherwise being able to make sure that the law is being followed, right? I mean, ultimately, the Texas courts will make that determination. But you've got to lead at the Office of Attorney General by example, make sure you're getting these things turned around, and you've got to get that stuff out, again, in accordance with the law.
Mr. Rice.
Yes, not much else to add. I do believe that there is always value in having third-party accountability, divided government, checks and balances, so on and so forth. And look, there are instances, law enforcement exceptions that Mays mentioned that I've had to, in the course of my investigations, have had to cite at both DOJ and at the Office of the Attorney General. And look, if there's a valid basis to withhold certain information at the right time, right? There's not like an unlimited amount of time to where these things can't be disclosed. But the answer shorthand is yes, under certain circumstances, of course.
All right. Each of you now, this will conclude my series of questions. Each of you now will have 90 seconds to either expand upon something you've already been asked about or an answer that maybe you'd like to flesh out. You can request a statement from one of your opponents, or you can introduce a new idea if you'd like to, understanding that you will have this opportunity again after Mr. Roy asks his questions. And we'll begin with Mr. Wrights.
Well, I think that one of the themes that you may be picking up on as this conversation is unfolding, and I'm very much enjoying it, and I hope you are too, is that at the end of the day, the candidates on this stage may all start to sound the same. I think we've given largely the same answers substantively. We've given similar justifications or rationale for those answers. So the question that you have to now ask yourself as you're evaluating what candidate you want to support is not who necessarily gave the best answer, but who has the actual battle scars that can give you the confidence that they have done what they said that they will do. The difference that I offer in this race is what Ken Paxton said when he endorsed me. He said that Aaron is the only battle-tested, experienced, and qualified candidate in this race. Now, he has known all of the candidates, including our missing friend, for decades. And in spite of having his own race to run, made the extraordinary step of saying that I only trust Aaron to continue the work and to be able to fulfill the promises that he's making on the campaign trail. Every candidate will say, I will do X. I'll create a task force. I'll create a special division. I will do this. I'll do that. I'm the only one that can say, I've done it successfully, and I've already won up and down the chain of the justice system. It's not just a throwaway endorsement from Paxton. Read the substance of it. The only one who can carry on the fight is me.
Mr. Roy, Congressman Roy, excuse me.
Well, so we have 90 seconds on a general array of topics. One thing that I think is critically important here is when you look at the full background of each of us, I'm the only one on the stage who has been a federal prosecutor in court who's put bad guys in jail. I'm the only one on the stage who's been the first assistant attorney general who's had to oversee the entirety of the office of attorney general, who has been there in the decision-making authority of key decisions for the state of Texas, whether it was DAPA and going and winning that case on deferred action against Obama, whether it was the Clean Power Plan and orchestrating all of that for the Office of Attorney General, whether it was suing Syrian refugee settlements, which we did not win, but took to court trying to defend the state of Texas, whether it was getting In God We Trust on cop cars across the state of Texas, whether it was defending HB2 and abortion laws in court. So with all due respect, some of us have been there and have done that, but have also been in court as a lawyer, putting bad guys in jail, who have also had legislative experience, who have also had the experience of being on the ballot and having to go through 4 elections, who have had to go challenge someone in a general election and win, and defeated Wendy Davis by 7 points in an R+3 district, including Austin, Texas. You want somebody who can get the entire job done and who has a track record of doing it, and who, by the way, is endorsed by Ted Cruz, the former Solicitor General of the state of Texas.
Senator Middleton.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but I guess I will now. Look, this is a show me, don't tell me business, right? This room is real tired of politicians telling them what they're going to do, right? They tell you all the time what they're going to do. They got to show you the results, right? That's why we're here. We want the results. I can show you those results. Like I began with, beating the left, right? That's why we're here. Defeating the left. I've taken on the woke transgender lobby, defeated them, authored and passed the Save Women's Sports Law, the strongest women's privacy law in America, which kicks perverted men out of women's private spaces, right? This is common sense stuff. Took on the atheists, got prayer back in our public schools and the 10 Commandments on the wall of classrooms, which is before the Fifth Circuit right now, and we're going to win that. Took on our foreign adversaries in Austin, stopped China from buying our land, designated cartels as terrorist organizations, tripled border security, and now taking on our newest and most growing threat, which is Sharia law and Islamification. But backing it up to what this role really is, this is not just some attorney. This is not just some appellate attorney. This is a leadership position. It's a 4,000 person agency, up to 750 lawyers at full staff. You got to have someone that's signed the front of a paycheck and knows where the buck stops. And I've got that experience because you have to hire the best talent to execute and win these victories for Texas.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I'd like to follow up on Judge Jackson's immigration question. I think when you look back, you'll see that that public opinion really started to change on the immigration issue when Governor Abbott started sending busloads of illegals to blue states and blue cities. That was a creative approach to a pretty tough problem. I'd like to hear from each of you what creative approaches you're going to bring specifically for border enforcement and immigration reform to the Office of Attorney General. And yeah, we start off with Mr. Wright.
Yeah, look, I love creative solutions to border security problems. I will say again that of the 46 lawsuits that I brought against the 46th president, about a quarter or a third of those were all immigration related. We had a bunch of bureaucratic lawyers who said, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, right? Lawyers are typically pretty risk averse. And yet we brought them anyway. We won virtually all of those cases, personally appearing in court myself to get the state of Texas temporary restraining orders or preliminary injunctions. I was also coordinating all the defensive work. So when Governor Abbott started issuing all of these various executive orders and then busing illegals up into the interior, into blue states, which I loved, it was me and my teams that were defending those laws. Now, moving forward, I think it's really important that we have someone who is deeply integrated with the Trump administration to bring the full force of federal immigration law into Texas, right? This is why it's so important to have an AG who is already trusted and vetted by the federal immigration apparatuses, whether it's ICE or Border Patrol or Customs and Border Protection or DOJ or DHS, so on and so forth, to be able to have a partner to facilitate the mass deportation of the millions and millions of illegal aliens that are in this state. Yes, we have an anti-sanctuary city law in the state of Texas. You know who's litigated on that and won? Me, against the city of San Antonio. Yes, we have a mandate that you sign on to 287G agreements. You know who has signed and facilitated the joint agreement between federal immigration enforcement and local governments that are signing the 287G agreements? Me. I'm the one that has that experience to creatively navigate the field of border security and illegal immigration. And so my bottom line is we are going to pursue a multi-front, multi-pronged effort to crack down on all those entities and local officials and nonprofits and C4s and corporate entities that are trying to thwart the deportation agenda. We're going to crack some heads and we're going to deport illegals. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Well, I agree we got to be creative, and obviously that busing was paid for out of Operation Lone Star, which I'm proud to have supported, and helped author that in the legislature. But here's one of the things that I would do. If we are ever facing an invasion, which we were under an invasion when Biden was president, he was putting illegal immigrants first and citizens second. As AG, I would author an Attorney General opinion officially declaring one and saying that we are under an invasion because we have an absolute right under the federal and the state constitution to repel any invasion that we are facing in Texas. And we do have to think creatively. And actually something that I filed while I was this past session, which is using the used wind turbine blades, right, from the Green New Scam to finish the border wall, right? We need to think outside. That would be the first time, by the way, that liberals oppose recycling. They wouldn't like that very much. But walls work, right? This works, and we need to use every tool on the table, including the ones I talked about earlier, like the ban on sanctuary cities. SB 8, which is a 287G program, if they are not signing 287G agreements, guess what? They're in violation of the ban on sanctuary cities. That went into effect this January the 1st, not that long ago. But we don't have long to enforce these laws. They need to be enforced on day one. And so if they have not signed that agreement, they need to be removed from office. It's that simple. They violated the ban on sanctuary cities. Also, SB 4. I wish we had had that tool during the 4 years of an open border. And unfortunately, there's an injunction on it right now. And I agree with Judge Oldham. He was correct in his dissent. And that's why I believe we're going to win that before the full Fifth Circuit, because that is the state exercising its 10th Amendment right to defend itself. That's what that's about, where the state can send illegal immigrants back to their country of origin. This is about putting Texas first. This is about putting our citizens first.
Well, to be creative, you've got to have the willingness to stand up and fight. And in 2006, when I was a lawyer in Washington, we fought the first big Bush amnesty. In 2013, when I was Senator Cruz's chief of staff, we fought to stop the Gang of Eight and the amnesty at that point in time. We tried to fight and we fought off the 2018 debacle when they were dealing with it under Paul Ryan. And now fast forward, in the middle of all that, when I was the first assistant attorney general, as I said earlier, we were suing and winning on the deferred action program under Obama, and we were suing and fighting the Syrian refugees, which was a precursor to what we're now seeing with all the refugee debacles we're seeing across the country. In Congress in 2019, I was the first to introduce the designating cartels as terrorist organizations and lead that effort in the face of much opposition saying we shouldn't, saying it would make the situation worse. I'm proud that that language has resulted in where we ended up with the president last year signing an executive order to carry that out. We should codify it. I'm proud of having organized and gotten developed and printed and pushed the Texas border plan. And then let's talk about leadership. You remember the speakers fight 3 years ago? Remember that? I was on the floor of the House taking arrows from all over the country saying, don't do this. You're going to risk a Hakeem Jeffries speaker. No, we weren't. We fought so that we had conservatives on the Rules Committee, on the Budget Committee, on the Appropriations Committee so we could get things passed. And part of the deal we cut with the speaker was that the Texas border plan that we drafted would become the basis for H.R. 2, which is what we needed to be able to pass laws to change what Biden and Mayorkas were doing to undermine us. Remember Mayorkas being impeached? Who was the first to call for his impeachment and draft these statements to impeach him? I did. You got to have leadership. You got to be able to stand up. You want creativity? Creativity comes from being willing to stand up and fight in the face of people telling you won't do it.
So my next question, we've seen attorneys generals in blue states in front of a lot of cameras lately. So being a Texan, tell me how you would define an activist attorney general, and would you be one? What would that look like? And we'll start with Senator Middleton.
Yeah, this is values-based. And as we've seen in states like California and New York, we're under attack. It's not just them, it's big blue companies as well. These big woke corporations that are trying to drag Texas down like they have all the other states. And as with anything, this is values-based. This is about protecting and defending, but not just that, advancing our conservative values. That's the most important role of the AG's office, is advancing the conservative movement and delivering victories for our great state, and using every resource and tool in that office to do exactly that. Because it is about defeating the left. Because the left does mean us harm. They do mean our children harm. They're coming for our kids. This really is a spiritual battle. You saw what they did to Charlie Kirk. They killed him because of his Christian values. They tried to kill President Trump. And we're just going to roll over and let him do that? No. So goes Texas, so goes America. This is it, right here. And they're trying to destroy us. It is that simple. And I will not allow it. I am a 7th generation Texan. I was born here. I'll be buried here. There is not another Texas to move to. This is it. And that's why this fight is so important.
So I think I understand the question, 100% sure, right? Because activism in the judicial sphere is a little different than I think what you're characterizing. Because activism in the judicial sphere is making up the law, effectively. Activism in the sphere of being the attorney general, I think, is going on offense and doing what is necessary to defend the people of Texas, defend the law, and to make sure that we can keep this state and keep this country. And on that score, then I think any attorney general should be an activist. Now, to some degree, you're kind of alluding to those in blue states that might be seeking the camera for the sake of it or getting in front of the camera. Getting in front of the camera is important only if you're trying to move a message and move the people, right? If you're doing it for your own self-aggrandizement, that's a fail. If you're doing it because you've got a message, you want to shape it and you want the people to follow you, then you should do that and you should do it as much as you can. Because we've got to build a coalition of people in this state who are willing to actually stand up and recognize that there is war being waged against us. And if we don't recognize that, we can't win it. You can't win a war that you don't acknowledge exists. The Islamification of Texas, it's happening. We have not done enough, period. With all due respect to all of our leadership currently in office, we have not done enough to stop the Islamification of Texas. We have not done enough to stop the corporatification of Texas, where boardrooms in New York and boardrooms in even Dallas are making decisions about our lives, telling us what we can do, what we can't do. We have not done enough to stand up and secure the border. You know, to talk about declaring an invasion, some of us were working with Russ Vought and Wade Miller and Brnovich in Arizona to get that done when the state of Texas wasn't doing it. We should have done it. We have got to be in front of these fights and we've got to lead, or we'll not have a state left.
We are at war with the left. People often talk about, oh, the left does lawfare. They're waging lawfare. No. We're in a lawfare environment. That's just a fact. And so the question is, who is going to be your next general that commands legal and litigation troops to go defeat the enemy up and down the chain of the justice system? So number one, you have to understand the nature of the fight that we're in. We're at war. We got bombed in Pearl Harbor, and whether we liked it or not, we were at war. That's what the left has done to us. They hate everything about us. They hate our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. They hate our language. They hate your skin color. They hate our children. They hate our marriages. They hate our happy and safe communities. They hate wholesome education. They hate thriving communities. They hate everything. If conservatives and Republicans stand for everything that is good, true, and beautiful, the left, in its current manifestation, stands for everything that is ugly, bad, and destructive. The primary arena in which we fight these forces that have unlimited national and international money, unlimited coverage from a completely broken media, no accountability, courts that they've bought, political candidates that give them safe harbor. We are fighting a level of sophisticated war that is difficult to even comprehend. What I offer is someone with an actual record going to war and defeating them in the justice system, not in a legislative body, because we're not applying for the legislature. I've never passed a bill in my life. But what I have done is deliver legal victories to win the war that we are in.
I'd like to stay on this theme. I enjoy where it's going. So California's Governor Gavin Newsom has famously weaponized his state government to be, in his words, an all of the above, or no, all of government approach to defeating the Trump administration. So looking forward, what can you do in the Office of Attorney General in Texas to inoculate us against a future President Newsom?
So, obviously, sitting in my perch in Congress, we're trying to do things now, which is not your question, but to codify laws that we need to do to try to prevent a future Biden-Mayorkas type administration, or worse yet, a Mamdani or a Newsom or somebody. And we need to do that, and we need to support the president right now. And I bring that up because we're in the middle of a fight right now where we all have to unite to be able to back the president in the remaining time we've got in order to do that. As Attorney General, we've got to be on the vanguard of challenging any laws, any efforts to undermine our laws that interfere with the ways and the lives and the well-being of Texans. Now, we all know that. We all agree on that. I think the question goes back, and it goes back, I think, to the point that we were talking about before. Let's take the invasion argument. At some point, we have to be willing to stand up and say, for example, if our border's being exploited by Biden and Mayorkas in what we believe is unlawful, and we believe is a blatant abuse of parole and a blatant abuse of asylum, and people like Jocelyn Nungare get murdered and raped under a bridge in Houston, and we allow that to happen as the leaders of the state of Texas because we're having some debate about what the constitutional authority is or is not, I think we're failing. I think we have a duty to say that we're going to stand up and, yes, declare an invasion and act on it. And it is the duty of the Attorney General to stand up and say that. I think that's critically important. I'm proud to have Jocelyn's mother's endorsement, Alexis, which I bring up only because Alexis came visit me in DC and talked about how important it was for us to use our voice to stand up in defense of people who love this state and love this country and want it to be secure. And I think that's what the AG needs to do.
Yeah, I may want to cede maybe 30 seconds of my time for a moment of prayer to make sure that that doesn't happen. I mean, the thought of having a Democrat in 2028 seize the White House is unconscionable. The Attorney General, regardless of who it is, it's a 4-year term. First 2 years, you're going to have Trump in office, okay? You got to partner with the Trump administration. Halfway through, there'll be a presidential election. Let's also be clear, the Democrats are going to try to steal it, so you need an Attorney General who's going to try to prevent that. If a Democrat, God forbid, wins the White House in 2028, go to war. We're going to war. Now, everyone, I imagine, on this dais is going to say the same thing. The difference, once again, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but I'm staying on message. The only one of us that has done that is me. Chip will tell you he did it during the Obama years, but it was so ineffective at it that Paxton fired him as his first assistant. That's why he went on a crusade against Paxton for years. I'm not disparaging anybody's character. I'm stating a fact. You need somebody who has won against a hostile administration up and down the chain of the justice system in state and federal courts. That's me. You like all those Texas v. Biden lawsuits that came out of the Biden era? Paxton's already told us. I was the one that coordinated all of them. I was his offensive coordinator. And so everyone up here will tell you, oh, we're going to go to war against a future president, Gavin Newsom or whatever. Okay, let's roll up the sleeves and see who has the actual battle scars doing that. Other candidates will say, I will do that. I'll do this. I will do this. I hope to do that. I'm the only one that's done it. And it's why when Paxton endorsed me to succeed him, he listed the litany of victories that I brought against the Biden administration. And when Trump nominated me to the senior ranks of the Justice Department, he specifically praised my track record going to war against a hostile Democratic administration. You don't have to wonder how I'm going to do it in the future. I've already done it, and we're just going to turn it up even hotter if we do get a Democrat in the future.
Well, first of all, I'm going to work really hard to make sure no Democrat is ever elected president ever again. First of all, I've been part of the grassroots for years. Knocked on 6,000 doors to get elected to office, beat a liberal incumbent who was not living up to his conservative promises, ran against an incumbent again when I ran for Texas Senate. You gotta be willing to stand up and fight against all the forces against you when they tell you you can't win, it's not possible. Incumbents are impossible to defeat. Not asking for permission. I'm doing the right thing and leaving the results to God. And that's what matters the most. And that's why I have fought for tools to go after these blue states, like the abortion pills, right? They were mailing abortion pills into Texas, killing our innocent unborn. And then they were passing shield laws in New York, in California. Newsom has passed a number of shield laws in California. And guess what? I worked on finding a way to defeat that. And we did. We passed a law this past session that will allow us to go to federal court in a qui tam action to defeat those shield laws and hold them accountable with civil penalties for those that are being protected by people like Gavin Newsom, those pill peddlers that are killing our innocent unborn in Texas. We're stopping them. And we're having to think outside the box to do exactly that. But we also got to stand up for our states' rights, right? When there is a Democrat in the White House, that is more important than ever. The 10th Amendment is more important than ever because we have to take care of ourselves. We're going to be under attack. We know it. There's never been a Democrat administration that we weren't under attack. Remember when they were trying to do Title IX, get boys into girls' restrooms and locker rooms and showers and sports? That's why I passed those laws to stop that, to take them on, to take the fight to them, to protect Riley Gaines and all the future daughters of our great state. But it is about that fight.
I believe it was Congressman Roy who mentioned Plyler v. Doe during his opening. I don't know if you're aware, that's a Tyler case. But in light of that, I'd like to hear from each of you, what's a Supreme Court decision that you would like to go after as Texas Attorney General? And we'll start with Mr. Wrights.
Look, it's Plyler v. Doe. This is a 1980s Supreme Court decision that in a 5-4 split, as narrow as you can get, deemed that there is in the Constitution a constitutional, big air quotes, requirement to expend public funds to provide a public education to illegal alien children. That has cost the state of Texas untold billions of dollars to provide, and then add on top of that, think about how that incentivizes illegal immigration and anchor babies and so-called birthright citizenship, okay? It absolutely has to be overturned. It's begging to be overturned, not just because of the narrow split, 5-4, but also because of the strength of the dissents in that case, which is inviting a constitutional challenge, but also the composition of the Supreme Court is significantly better for conservatives now than it was back in the 1980s. And so we need to be able to create the set of facts and marry it with the law to then give rise to the litigation and appeals that will go up to the U.S. Supreme Court to get rid of that thing. It's unconscionable that this is happening in the state. Now, just recently, the state of Texas was, until a few months ago, giving in-state tuition to the children of illegal aliens as well. Now, when I was in the Justice Department, I helped to coordinate a settlement between the federal government and the state of Texas to get rid of that thing, because it's crazy. You could be a legal patriotic American from out of state and you got to pay out-of-state tuition, but you're here illegally and you get to pay in-state tuition? It's ridiculous. We're getting rid of Plyler. We're overturning that thing, and as Attorney General, I'll be the one to see it through.
I think it was Plyler in other cases, right? Was that? Yeah. Well, look, here's the thing, is we have magnets for illegal immigration. That's what's going on here. Some of them are already referenced. The in-state tuition for illegal immigrants, where you're having to subsidize taxpayers and other students, by the way, are having to subsidize illegal immigrants at higher education, public institutions of higher education. Why on earth should an illegal immigrant at UT Tyler pay a lower tuition than a citizen from Shreveport or from Louisiana? Does that make any sense? And we're wondering why so many are flooding Texas. Well, healthcare, education, the list goes on. And Plyler versus Doe is really the heart of that, right? Because we spend about $100 billion a year on our public schools in Texas. And a lot of that is going to illegal immigrants. And it was a terrible decision of legislating from the bench. And praise God for President Trump and his Supreme Court appointments. I mean, thank God for that. We would not have these victories even on the table, even possible, without him and his appointments. You think of Dobbs. How many innocent babies would be dead today, right, without overturning Roe versus Wade? That is thanks to President Trump. That's one of the greatest victories. Probably that is the greatest victory we've ever had in front of the Supreme Court. But we also have to stand up for our Christian values as well. This false doctrine of separation of church and state that's worked its way through our court system, that is nowhere in the Constitution. It doesn't say it anywhere. It was only in a letter from Jefferson to the Danbury Baptists. And yet this is how the left has gotten God out of government, which we know they can't win that because all government is established on his authority. But we have to defeat these atheist precedents that have stopped prayer in school, that have stopped children from going to Christian schools, and frankly, that have stopped what made our country great, which is our faith.
Well, thank you. There was a reason that I mentioned Plyler earlier. I do think it is one of the most significant magnets and one of the most significant problems that we face as a state. If we don't stop it, then it is really difficult to stop the magnet of the flow of people coming across our border. We got to fight birthright citizenship. We've got to fight a host of issues that cause that pressure. But we've already talked about Plyler here on the stage. Just know that it's one of my foremost priorities of running for Attorney General, which is why I mentioned it. But there's a host of cases. We could sit here all night talking about cases that Texas ought to be challenging. You can go all the way back to Wickard v. Filburn and the overreach of the federal government in terms of what the commerce power is for the reach of the federal government into our lives. You could go to Obergefell in manufacturing something that doesn't exist under the mysteries of life, quoting ridiculous Supreme Court jurisprudence. We have to be vigilant in challenging these at every single turn. I was in the office of the Attorney General with Attorney General Paxton when we were the last holdouts fighting to stop the implementation of Obergefell. I think there's a war waging against our soul as Texans, and those things need to be fought. Plyler is important because it has a critical impact on our state and our local cities and their ability to afford education and tax dollars and all of the impact of illegal immigration. But, I'll make one final point here. I mean it when I say something that I don't believe the Commerce Clause should be abused. One of my opponents is trying to slander me as being pro-trans because I stood up to try to say that the law that we were passing in December that Marjorie Taylor Greene moved to try to stop, transgender surgeries, that it should be under the funding clause, not the Commerce Clause. And I have bled to try to fight and stop the transgender lobby. And so I'll be darned if I'm going to allow that kind of slander to occur.
My last question, be a little bit in the weeds, but I hate toll roads. I think most Texans hate toll roads. What the state constitution hates is perpetuities. But it seems like all the toll roads in Texas are pretty perpetual. Is that a violation of the Constitution? Is that something you'd look at? And we start with Senator Middleton.
Yeah, I agree. It is a violation of the rule against perpetuities. And here's why. You're seeing these toll roads created, and as they're paid off, right, the toll stays on. And they just cycle into the future toll road projects and future toll road projects and future toll road projects. And Terry Hall has seen this again and again and again. And not only that, as these roads are paid off, you might have a, $1 toll you didn't pay that turns into $80 penalty. And a third-party collection agency that has nothing to do with the government, right? This is a public-private partnership. This is not a government entity. Gets $79 of that, or $79.99, and maybe 0.01 actually went to someone's profiting off of it, in other words. And we've got to make sure that we get this right, because I've heard this story again and again and again. This is the only way people can get to work. This is how they feed their family. This is how they go to their job. And it's another tax that they're paying in order to just live their life and to go to work. And there are these flexible tolls, right? The flex tolls. A lot of times those are on managed lanes on freeways. You already paid for it and you're having to pay for it again. We saw it in Harris County where they actually bought 290, right? They bought part of 288. And then they didn't take the tolls off. That means you paid for it twice. is the reality of that. So, tolls are actually, I think at the end of the day, a deceptive trade practice sometimes, right? We need to look at that in the AG's office to see where they're being truthful in how they're billing, and also truthful in what they're charging, and truthful in what they have sold the public when those toll roads were approved. We don't need to approve any more toll roads in Texas either, by the way. We need to make sure that these are freeways because taxpayers are already paying for these things.
Well, we should just give the mic to Terry and then just walk back, right? The fact of the matter is, I'm pretty sure we're going to be unanimous in this room and unanimous on the stage about our opposition to tolls existing in perpetuity. We should use every tool in the Office of the Attorney General to, look into the law, look into every single aspect that we can do to stop it, particularly when it's in violation of the both spirit and the intent of the statute. And I do think this engaging in perpetuity is one of those core issues when you think about Texas, and we talk about how great we are in our low taxes. Not so sure about that, right? I mean, property taxes and my parents who are, 83 and 78 and what they can afford and not afford in Blanco, the extent to which you've got, and by the way, I'm going to launch into the whole thing on taxes here because it's all relevant, but the schools, the local schools, we act like we're doing some great service by trying to reduce our valuations. And at the end of the day, you've got these massive schools being built by these corrupt institutions in the hip pockets of all the local people making tons of money, all the same advisors, all the same architects, making tons of money, and then it gets on a bond that passes in May with 5 people voting, and now we're all paying out the nose on our taxes. We need to look at all of that and rip it all apart, and in the AG's office, study every aspect of how taxes are being applied to the people of Texas and whether or not it's consistent with the Constitution and the laws of Texas, and work with the legislature to keep cleaning it up. But tolls are just one piece of a very messy pie of taxation in the state of Texas that is not remotely aligned with the bravado that Texas is somehow a low-tax state. We're not, and we need to be.
Yeah, like everyone else, I would just wholly adopt whatever Terry would say in response to this question. I mean, I think we're all in agreement here. Maybe the theme that I would want to touch on in my minute or two is that government always, unless energetically reined in, grows all the time. Your taxes, the costs, the bureaucracies, the personnel, you always need more. To pay for the more, you got to spend more. In order to get a loophole around raising your taxes, they want to impose a toll. The toll never goes away. And as Chip mentioned, there are all kinds of tools that the AG's office has to start from scratch and really re-scrutinize what all of these local entities and public-private partnerships and nonprofits and the MUDs and the PUDs and the toll authorities, all these things, we've got to strip it all back and ask ourselves, from the AG's perspective, is what they are doing consistent with the rule of law? Now, one of the most important tools that the AG has under this theme that we're talking about is the Public Finance Division. So all of these public bonds, every bond that many of the activists here get engaged in their local community, whether it passes or not, it gets routed up to the Public Finance Division of the Attorney General's office, and the Attorney General's office then has to review it for compliance with the jungle, the bramble bush of laws that govern how public finances and public bonds are supposed, and public debt and all this stuff is supposed to be issued. I think the tendency is for that particular division to become controlled by bureaucrats who tend to rubber stamp things without really scrutinizing with a political mind whether what ought to be certified, what bonds ought to be serviced, what debt ought to be issued, ought to be in the first place. And so my commitment thematically is to really weaponize that division to make sure that our taxes are being used efficiently and in accordance with all relevant state laws and regulations.
And now we're up to our second rebuttals. And we'll start with Mr. Wright. You have a minute and a half to hit upon anything in rebuttal or new ideas.
Look, Chip mentioned slander coming from another opponent. It's not me putting out the commercials accusing Chip of being pro-trans. However, I would like to pile on, nevertheless. Look, at the end of the day, I don't think that Chip is pro-trans. I don't think in his heart he's pro-trans. The criticism for Chip is that he raises all kinds of hell for nothing and then ends up voting for the bill anyway. And so the problem here with Chip is exactly what President Trump said about him repeatedly, that Chip is a grandstanding egomaniac who, like he criticized, tries to get coverage from the media for, again, this isn't my words, this is the president's words, who is grandstanding for the purposes of stealing the limelight. That's why Senator Middleton is putting out ads criticizing Chip. So I agree with Mays' criticism, but it's not just because we think that in Chip's heart that he's pro-trans. We believe that Chip is one of the most belligerently anti-Trump, anti-Paxton elected officials in America. And it's why as late as December of 2024, Trump was calling in a series, a half a dozen of Truth Social posts, why Trump said Chip ought to be ousted from office. Not because he's got good faith arguments about, what the Constitution ought to do, but because he's in it for himself to oppose the president and Trump.
And Congressman Roy.
There's quite a bit there. Number one thing that you will not see from me is using up a Senate confirmation post to get 70 days of time in a post in the Department of Justice and use that as a ladder climbing exercise to run for Attorney General. I didn't do that. Mays didn't do that. What you also won't see from me is trying to defend myself in a way that will undercut our current candidates. I have publicly stated my position with respect to Attorney General Paxton repeatedly. We had strong disagreements about how you do things. I stand by that. Okay? I stand by that. But I'm not going to get into it for the good of the state of Texas. But when friends of mine are being slandered, when longstanding Texas Rangers are being slandered, I'm standing with the people and the friends that I know. And thirdly, with respect to this issue on the trans issue, I knew I was going to take arrows, doing what many of us in Congress wanted to do, to not abuse the Commerce Clause, to create a law that would put the federal government in Texas to enforce the law rather than using the spending clause in a much more intelligent approach that, by the way, would have a shot of passing the Senate. Those things matter. I am proud of what I've delivered because you got to be smart to figure out how to deliver things for the people in the United States Congress. And I stand by it. Knowing I would take the arrows, we stood up to try to get that right. And instead, it's dead in the Senate.
Senator Middleton.
Look, one of the things that I've always fought for is protecting kids. And as a dad to 4 little ones, 3 boys, little girl, I know how precious that innocent young life is. And I see the abuses. You see in committee, people that come, moms that have had their child brought into sex trafficking, been exposed to pornography, been harmed by these awful materials like Kristen Bentley shows us. Just the books that you'd be embarrassed to show to an adult. They were doing worse than that. They were trying to gender mutilate children. They were trying to permanently alter them and disfigure them, which is frankly evil child abuse. And that's something I fought for in the legislature. It took nearly 4 years to pass that and get that into law. The ban on child transgender surgeries and chemical castration. It's crazy that we have to do stuff like that. It's crazy that we have to fight to pass bills like that and go up against this huge medical industrial complex that is lobbying against us and all of that. But this is what it comes down to. You can't use some contrived constitutional argument and say, I got to protect the Commerce Clause when it comes at the expense of our kids. There is no right to hurt a child, period.
So we're up to our closing statements, and those are 1 minute each.
You know what? I'm going to take license here. We're running so far ahead of time. So I got a question for you guys. I want you one at a time, and we're going to start with Senator Middleton. Then we'll go with Congressman Roy and then Mr. Wrights. I want you to explain to the audience a fork in the road experience in your life. I mean, one of the most difficult decisions that you've ever made, that you've ever had to make. And I want you to explain, 2 minutes each. I want you to explain how you got through it, what you learned from it, and how it changed your decision-making process into the future.
That's a great question, and I think I would go back to when my father, he was ill, he's very sick. This is 2013, and I'll just be honest, he'd not taken care of himself. And we had to make the decision, hospice or not. And as a son, that's one of the hardest decisions you'll ever make. I thought about it a lot. I prayed about it a lot. And ultimately, thank God, he showed us the right decision. The Holy Spirit intervened, and it ended up that hospice was the right decision. But that's one of those things that my wife and I, we'd only been married maybe, 4 or 5 years at that point, that we really struggled over. But it taught me a lesson to seek God's wisdom and counsel in that. Because hard decisions like that, He's the only one that can really decide for us. And that's something that really stuck with me, because you make tough decisions in the legislature as well. You really do. It's hard. It's hard in lawmaking. There are people on both sides. But your faith's got to guide you in all of this. This is not a of the earth thing, right? That's where you see people start to go wrong in the Capitol, where they make it an of the earth, where they're worried about the gold pin on their lapel, where they're worried about their title, where they're worried about their position, where they want to go be somebody. But all that matters is that you leave it better than you found it. Because we're all going to be on the composite, those composites in the basement with all the pictures on them. We're all going to be down there. We're all going to be forgotten at some point. But all that matters is we leave it better than we found it, and that we teach our kids to love the Lord.
So, Joanna, I think you were alluding to difficult decisions we've made professionally and tough choices we've made, but because, the only choice that matters is choosing Jesus Christ. And that is a profound shift in your entire perspective on life and the choices you make, and then making tough decisions from that day forward. And I can talk about that, and I can talk about my faith. I can talk about the choices that then I made from that. I could talk about going through cancer and the tough choices, and whether you take an experimental chemo treatment in MD Anderson and then figuring that out, and then going through the prayerful consideration with your family, and then figuring out what you're going to do if you don't make it, and coming up with the difficult decisions about who's going to look after your children if you don't make it, and talking to your friends about how they'll raise your son or your daughter if you don't make it when your daughter is 4 months old and your son's 2 years old. All of those things are things that matter. We're talking about politics. The reason we're all running for Attorney General, the reason I'm running for Attorney General, is because I want a state that is worthy of my children's future. I want a state that is worthy of the past sacrifices, the people that have bled and died for this state and this country. And so from my perspective, every decision I've made that is tough politically, and there's been a bunch of them, the speaker's fight, when I'm getting everything thrown at me, different decisions along the way, legislation, the decision in December on this issue we've already debated somewhat. Those decisions are informed by my faith, and they're informed by having survived cancer and wanting to leave something better behind for my kids. Because it's literally, there's no point for us living free if we're not moving more people to know Jesus Christ.
When I joined Ken Paxton as his deputy in October of 2020, what I refer to as the coup happened on my second day on the job. Second day. And in that first week or two, you could only imagine the chaos of being up on that executive floor and wondering what was happening, what's right from left, who's telling the truth, what really happened, what does Paxton say, what do his accusers say, who can I trust, who can I not trust? It was a scorpion's nest in that moment. And what I did is I did what I was trained to do as a Marine, is when the bullets start flying, you slow down, you breathe, and you think clearly. You don't panic, and you separate fact from fiction. And not just my training as a Marine, but also as a lawyer, separating truth from falsity, understanding the actual application of the law versus the spin on that law. And it took me no more than a week, maybe two, on that floor of Vipers to figure out that what was happening was a coordinated hit job against the most effective and compelling attorney general in the country, Ken Paxton. And it was clear as crystal for me to say, nope, I don't stand on the side of your accusers. I stick with Paxton. That is in stark contrast with the decision that my two opponents made. Chip Roy was the first elected official in America to call for Paxton to be removed from office. Immediately after that, Mays Middleton started unloading vast sums of money, bankrolling everyone that wanted to take him out. I was loyal. In that moment, I was loyal. My opponents betrayed Ken Paxton, and they did it based on a lie.
Let's go on to our closing statements. Those are each 1 minute, and we'll start with Mr. Wrights. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 minutes.
You know, the first time I ever swore an oath to the United States Constitution was as a brand new second lieutenant in the Marines. I was 22 years old, sadly to say, my hair fast approaching its current state already. And I raised my right hand and I said, I, Aaron Wrights, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, as someone who came up in the era of the war on terror and as somebody who ultimately deployed to Afghanistan, is that two? She said two. As someone who deployed to Afghanistan, I primarily back then focused on those foreign enemies to the Constitution. Now, the next time that I swore that oath, it was in the West Wing with my wife and 4 kids on my left and Attorney General Bondi on my right. And I raised my right hand and I said the exact same oath. And yet I had come to appreciate in those intervening nearly 20 years that while we do have foreign enemies, the primary enemies that keep me up at night are the domestic enemies of the Constitution. They are at war with us in the justice system. They hate everything about us. They seek to kill us. The time has now come to choose your state's attorney, to not just fight them, but defeat them. And my record leading legal troops into legal combat to deliver legal victories for our values and our Constitution to do exactly that and defeat the left is second to none. President Trump trusted me to do it. Senator Cruz trusted me to do it. Attorney General Paxton, who endorsed me to succeed him, trusted me to do it. The Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court trusted me to do it. And now my ask to you is to trust me as your next Attorney General to defend our Constitution against all of our enemies, foreign and domestic. My name's Aaron Wrights, and I hope to earn your support. Thank you, and God bless.
Senator Middleton.
There's a reason why I'm the only one that's been protested during this Attorney General's race. There's a reason why they've threatened my life. There's a reason why they've threatened my family's lives. It's because the left knows who their true enemy is. They know who's already defeating them in this fight. And look, for 7 years, I've been writing these laws, defending them against attacks by Democrat attorneys in the House, defending them against attacks by Democrat attorneys in the Senate, getting them over the finish line, winning. Who better to enforce these laws than someone who has already gotten them over the finish line and defeated the left that is trying to stop them? And this is why I've earned the endorsement of grassroots conservative groups around this state, the ones that you have to win a statewide primary, like Texas Values, Texas Homeschool Coalition, Texas Eagle Forum, Moms for America, True Texas Project, Texas Family Project has as well 51 Trump-endorsed legislators, a majority of our state Republican executive committee members. And the reason why I have all those endorsements is because I've been in the trenches with our conservative grassroots all over the state for years, delivering these victories for our great state. And look, when I think of what's ahead of us, and I think of the fight, I know that we have the persistence and the grit to win this, just like we did in 1836 when we won our independence. And I think of that letter that William B. Travis wrote at the Alamo, finest piece of Texas history. It's a victory or death letter. And it says something very important at the end. The Lord is on our side. You know what? The Lord is on our side in the great state of Texas. And that is why we will win these fights for our future.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all, and thank you all for coming here tonight. And thank you all for hosting us and the ability to be able to ask you for your vote. And ultimately, that's what I'm doing. I'm asking you for your vote. And I could go down the list of endorsements. You can go look at my website. There's a lot of them. The only endorsement that matters is yours. I believe that the good Lord gave me a certain set of skills at a certain moment in history to lead this state. Former federal prosecutor, former first assistant attorney general, 4-term congressman, someone who's been in the thick of the battle. You got to have a vision to be able to look down the field and figure out where to take the people that are following you and to take our great state. We never would have gotten the big, beautiful bill passed if I had been working alongside the president diligently to pass the legislation that we set in motion in the speaker's fight 3 years ago when people told us we couldn't get that done and win. We did. We faced the odds and we won. They told us we couldn't get the big, beautiful bill done. We did. They told me we couldn't get the green new scam subsidies cut and stop funding all of these ridiculous battery facilities and wind farms. I stood up last May in the face of the White House and Congress and said, no, we on the Budget Committee are going to stop this because we're not going to let Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins screw the American people with more green new scam subsidies. For 4 days, there were a lot of arrows coming, I can assure you. We stopped it, we got the provisions back in, and we won for you. You've got to have someone who can stand up and take the arrows no matter what's coming, even if they know those arrows are going to come. Otherwise, we're not going to have a state to pass down to our kids and grandkids. And when I said that to my wife, that I survived cancer, that I'd leave it all on the field, that's my promise to you too, to leave everything on the field to pass down to Texas worthy to our children and grandchildren. God bless you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here tonight and for your prompt agreement to reschedule after the weather was horrible on last Monday. So thank you again very much for that. And by the way, you have some fine campaign support too. The staff that you've got that I have dealt with have been respectful. They've been kind. They've been prompt in answering. Thank you very much. And they haven't been bullies, because y'all must have told them I don't take very kindly to that.
We 100% told them that.
That's a good thing. So I want to thank y'all again for being here tonight. I want to leave you with a couple of admonitions here. You know, when we talk about being Christians, it really matters how we act to each other. You know, we talk in our movement about rhinos. We talk about people who are Republican in name only. You know, when they run for office, they talk about how conservative they are. They talk about how they love Jesus, and they talk about how they love the Constitution. And then when it comes down to those big decisions, they just can't get some of that over the line. And we get frustrated with them. We get really frustrated with them. Let us not be Chris Knows. Let us not be Christians in name only. Let's not throw away our witness over politics. Because I say this to people all the time across the state of Texas. There is no politician that is going to save us from the mess we're in. No, not one. They can't. Unless they have a whole lot of help from on high. So I would say to you all, you know, we are called to pray for those in authority over us, whether we like them or not. Now, that's tough. There's no fine print in Scripture that tells you, you know, pray for them if you like them. Pray for them if they did you right. Pray for them if they return your phone calls. There is no fine print. Because you know what? When the Lord convicts you to pray for those who abuse you, who don't listen to you, He's working on you. He's working on you. And that is what the whole purpose of life is for us to fulfill what it is He put us here to do it in a way that honors Him and gives encouragement to our fellow man. There are a lot of hopeless people around us every single day. So why don't we try to walk out Christian love, even if we disagree on candidates? So I'm going to tell you what I've told everybody in our endorsements. Joanne Fleming never, ever intends to lose a friend or to burn a relationship over an endorsement. Amen. If you leave me after we've had a long-term relationship, if you leave Grassroots America, you'll be doing all the leaving. It is your responsibility and your right to choose the candidates that you want to support. I would just ask you to please don't burn down your friends that you're going to need before we ever get to save Texas. Because I'm going to tell you, we are in grave straits. One of the reasons that we have a problem across this country is because too many people believe the problems have all been solved because President Trump's in office. We are in danger of losing the midterms over complacency. And I'm going to tell you, if we do that, if we lose the midterms, President Trump's going to be impeached every 15 minutes. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to get tough. So I'm asking you tonight, all of you that are here and you that are watching and people who will watch this video, examine yourselves like I am examining myself. And let's try to get through these primaries without burning each other down, because I'm going to tell you, you're going to need your fellow patriot in a future battle. Don't be a Chris No. God bless you. Thank you for being here.